In the beginning of the movie, a woman named Tess Marshall pulls up in the pouring rain to a house she booked on Airbnb. When she gets to the door, though, she finds that the house keys aren't in the lockbox, as the booking agent had said they would be. Tess tries to get in touch with the person who booked her, but she can only reach voicemail. She leaves a message asking to be called back. She is even more confused when she sees that the lights are on inside the house. She then rings the doorbell and is surprised to see a man inside. The man's name is Keith, and we now know that he is renting the same house. It looks like the booking agent accidentally made 2 reservations for the same house. Since they can't reach the bookers and it's pouring rain outside, the man lets Tess in because he feels bad for her. Keith then shows her his app-based booking confirmation to show that he isn't lying. Tess is still uncomfortable being in the same house as the man, so she looks up the nearest hotel and finds that it's full for tonight. Keith, who is listening in on her call, tells her that there is a big medical convention in town right now, so it would be impossible to find a room. So, he suggests she stay the night and lets her sleep in the bedroom. After he brings her suitcase inside, she goes to the bedroom, where she finds his wallet and decides to take a picture of his ID for safety. She gives the wallet back to him and then takes a shower. When Tess gets back to the hall, he's waiting for her with a bottle of wine that hasn't been opened yet and 2 glasses. Still awake, she politely declines to drink, but agrees to sit next to him and talk. Keith tells her he's seen Catherine James' latest movie after she says she's in town for a job interview with a director named Catherine James. Not only that, Catherine James's next movie will be about a Detroit music group, and Keith is one of the people who started it. Having found something they have in common, Tess relaxes and the two start a lively conversation. Finally, Keith does a silly trick with a set of clean sheets that makes her laugh. Together, they put the new sheets on her bed, and when Keith tells her goodnight, it's clear that he's starting to like her. At night, though, the door wakes her up with a creak, and she finds it open. Keith can be heard panting and saying "help me" in his sleep, which makes it even creepier. This makes her walk toward him. She didn't know it, but in the background, a bedroom door slowly opened and closed. She then jolts Keith awake, which scares him. Tess says that she heard her door open and thought it was him, but he says no in a confused way. She makes sure to lock her door before going back to sleep after she says she's sorry. She doesn't see Keith in the morning, but she finds a note from him that says he's out and about and that he had a great time with her the night before. When she finally leaves the house to go to her job interview, she sees for the first time that every other house in the neighborhood, except the one she and Keith are staying in, is in bad shape and empty. But because she's running late, she doesn't pay attention to the big red flag and keeps going to her interview. Catherine James asks her where she is staying in Detroit after the interview, and she says Brightmoor. Catherine is scared just by hearing the name. She tells her not to stay in the area because it's not a safe place, but Tess reassures her that she's fine. When Tess goes back to her house, you can see a homeless man running in the background. He tells her to leave the house by yelling at her. Tess is scared, so she runs to get the house keys and locks the door just as the man is about to get to her. She tries to call 911 while keeping an eye out for the man, but they couldn't send any help for her right now. So, she packs her bags and tries to get by for now by staying in the house. Later, she finds out that the bathroom upstairs is out of toilet paper, so she goes to the basement to get some. But when she goes back up, the door slowly swings open and closes on its own, locking her inside. Then she remembers that she left her phone in the bedroom. Even worse, the house key is in her pocket, making it impossible for Keith to get back inside. She looks around for anything that might help her break the window because she can see it, but she finds a rope sticking out of the wall instead and decides to pull it. It turns out that the basement has a scary door, and she can see how dark it is inside. She then hangs out in the basement until she gets bored, at which point she tries to use a mirror to shine light into a dark room that turns out to be a straight hallway. She finally decides to try it because she has nothing else to do. Once she's in the straight hall, she finds another door. When she opens it, it leads her to a small room with dried blood on the bed, a bucket, and an old camera. She is so scared by what she sees that she runs back to the basement. Keith finally gets there, so she calls out to him through the small window and gives him the key so he can come save her. When he does, she starts to freak out, grabs her bag to leave, and starts talking incoherently about finding a scary room with a bed, camera, and pail. Keith, on the other hand, doesn't think it's strange that these things were found in a basement, so he decides to look into it himself. He tells her to stay upstairs in case the door to the basement closes by itself. It doesn't take her long to get angry. She tries to check on him, but the door is slowly closing. This time, she makes sure to use a chair to hold the door open before going downstairs. She tries to call him again, but he doesn't pick up. Then Tess walks back down the dark hall until she gets to the room. She doesn't find him there, which is strange. When she goes back to the dark hall, she finds that there is another door that leads to a set of stairs that go down. She yells his name again, and this time he starts yelling for help. She has no choice but to go down when he starts yelling for help. Tess follows the sound of his screams through the dark hallways until she finds rusty cages with dog bowls in them. As she goes deeper, she finds Keith, who is scared and says that someone bit him. Keith sees danger everywhere, and they argue about which way to go to get away. But before they can run, a horrible naked humanoid monster comes and bashes Keith's head against the wall until he dies. The creature then screams at Tess, and after that, no one knows what happens. In the next scene, A.J. Gilbride, a successful actor in Hollywood, gets a call from one of his co-workers. They tell him that he has been fired from his most recent show because a co-star has accused him of sexual misconduct. Because his job is in danger, he flies to Detroit to sell off an asset so he can pay for a lawyer for his ongoing lawsuit. AJ goes to a rental property he owns in Detroit, which just so happens to be the Brightmoor house. When he gets there, he sees that Tessa's car is still parked in front of the house and that her things and Keith's are all over the house. This makes AJ angry, and he thinks right away that someone has been squatting at his place. He tries to call his house manager, but she says that there haven't been any new Airbnb bookings in the past 2 weeks. For now, he doesn't care about this, so he goes out to meet a friend in town. This is where we find out that AJ really did rape his co-star, but he won't admit it. The next morning, he starts looking through Keith and Tessa's stuff because he wants to know who they are. He then finds Tessa's laptop and sees her username. Later, he finds her car keys on the small dining table. This means that the basement is the last place to look for the squatters. He gets dressed and gets a small knife and a flashlight to protect himself. As soon as he walks into the basement, he hears a loud bang coming from one side of the wall. He also finds the rope that is sticking out and opens the door that was hidden. But because AJ isn't the brightest, the room with the bed and camera doesn't scare him. Instead, he sees it as a chance to raise the value of his home, since more space means more money. He gets a measuring tape and starts to figure out how big the dark hallway and the scary room are. When he finds the other hidden door that leads deeper underground, he gets even more excited and starts measuring as he goes down. Even when AJ sees the cages, he doesn't get scared. Instead, he keeps going until he sees light coming from further down the tunnel. When he walks up to it, he finds a smelly room with an old tutorial on how to nurse a baby playing on a small TV. Then, all of a sudden, he feels a pull on his measuring tape, so he lets it go. When he hears a scary sound, he runs further into the tunnel out of fear. At this point, the thing shows up in front of his face. AJ is so scared that he keeps running until he falls down a hole and finds Tess with him. The next scene takes place in the 1980s, when the original owner of the house, Frank, is moving out. We can see that the street is still full of people when he gets into his car. He goes to the grocery store and tells the worker that he needs baby supplies because he's about to have a baby. But when Frank gets back to his car, he starts following a woman's car and watching her when she gets home. This shows that something is wrong with Frank. Next, he pretends to be an electrician from the city who has come to check for possible power outages. But when he gets into her house, he goes to her bathroom and unlocks the window before going home. As he pulls up, his neighbor walks up to him and tells him that a lot of people are selling their homes because the city is expecting an economic crash. But Frank is sure he's not going anywhere. When he goes back inside the house and opens the door to the basement, he hears a woman scream in pain. Back in the present, Tess tells AJ to stay calm so as not to scare the creature. The creature appears as if on cue and hands them a baby bottle to drink through the metal bar. Tess drinks the disgusting milk because she knows the creature just wants them to be her babies. She tells AJ to do the same, but he won't. Seeing that something is wrong, the creature follows them into the hole and gently holds Tess. The scary thing walks up to AJ and starts talking to him like he's a baby. She then grabs AJ by the legs and pulls him away, leaving Tess alone in the hole. The mother drags AJ into the TV room and makes him nurse. Tess, on the other hand, uses this chance to climb out of the hole and get away. When she steps on the measuring tape, she makes a noise, which makes the creature chase after her. Even worse, the door to the basement is locked, so she has to start crawling out of the small window with the help of a homeless person. Just as the mother is coming to get her, it turned out that the homeless people in the area already knew about the thing in the house, and it was the same guy from the first scene. The homeless man said that the monster comes out at night and will look for Tess, so she needs to leave right now. Also, the thing in the basement is not alone. AJ is exploring the tunnels at the same time. He finds a bell and a power line and decides to follow them. He finds a room with an old man in it. It turns out that the old man is Frank. Back on the surface, Tess has made it to a nearby gas station and used the shopkeeper's phone to call 911. But when the police show up, they think she's a drug addict and look down on her, so she convinces them to come to the house to save AJ. But when the police arrived, they didn't believe what Tess said. They thought she was just another drunk homeless person, so they drove away. During this, Frank points to his bedside drawer and tells AJ to get it for him. AJ does so. After that, AJ finds a bunch of tapes with different women's names on them, so he decides to play one. It turned out that it had a recording of a woman being raped on it. When AJ gets angry, he starts to yell at Frank until Frank pulls a gun out of a drawer and shoots himself. Upstairs, Tess broke a window in the house and went inside to get her car keys. But when she gets in the car and starts it up, the mother comes out and tells her to drive toward her, so she does, crashing into the wall until she appears to pass out. After that, she goes downstairs to get AJ, while AJ takes Frank's gun to arm himself and heads back out into the tunnels. Unfortunately, AJ shoots Tess in the waist by accident. He then helps her get up, and they run out of the house as fast as they can. But to their surprise, the thing that was stuck to the car is no longer there. Since Tess's car is broken and AJ's car keys are somewhere in the tunnels, Tess leads them to where the homeless man lives so they can find shelter. Here, the homeless man tells them that the original owner of the house, who goes by the name Frank, was a serial rapist who held women hostage and raped them until they had babies. He would then make the babies have babies together, and after many generations of this, the mother was born. She has been living in the house for over 40 years. The man also makes them feel safe by telling them that the creature never comes this far from the house. But he might have said it too soon, because the homeless man's mother shows up out of nowhere and rips his limbs off. This scares AJ and Tess, so they run up a nearby water tower, but Tess has trouble because she's hurt. AJ doesn't remember he has a gun until they get to the top, but he's too stupid to hold onto it and it slips out of his hands. He has nowhere to go, so he shows what a jerk he is by throwing Tess off the tower, knowing that her baby would try to save her. And, sure enough, she does. AJ goes downstairs to check on Tess because he thinks the mother is dead. We can see that the mother protected her from the fall, and Tess does make it. He then says that he doesn't know what happened and that all he remembers is that Tess started to fall. AJ is shocked when the thing stands up and grabs him. She rips out AJ's eyes with her thumbs and then breaks his head in half. The mother then walks over to Tess and tries to pick her up gently, but Tess is in too much pain. She whispers to Tess and tries to lead her back down the tunnels, but Tess grabs AJ's gun. Then, with a slight look of regret on her face, she points it at the mother and pulls the trigger. Then Tess gets up and leaves the area to get medical help. And that's the end of the movie.